Marcus Carter, an 18-year-old fresh out of a magnet high school in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, set out one humid Thursday morning with a clear goal: to buy his first car using his hard-earned cash. With a blue folder clutched tightly in his hand, its pages filled with printed listings of used hybrids under $15,000 and with mileage that promised reliability, he stepped into the gleaming glass doors of Summit Motors, a modest yet polished car dealership located just off I-24. Dressed in a fitted gray windbreaker, black cargo pants, and a pair of well-worn white sneakers, Marcus wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there with a single-minded focus, determined to secure a reliable vehicle for the long drives he'd soon face as he prepared for his upcoming engineering studies at Georgia Tech. Inside Summit Motors, the atmosphere was meticulously curated. Designer displays shimmered under bright LED lights, highlighting every curve of the showroom's collection, from sleek sedans to sparkling convertibles. Expensive cologne mixed with the scent of new leather and polished chrome, creating an ambience of refined luxury. Yet as Marcus approached the reception desk, where a receptionist sat absorbed by her computer screen, he was met with a disinterested glance and a curt, "Can I help you?" Her eyes flicked briefly over the folder in his hand, then returned to her screen as if he were nothing more than a distraction. "I'm here to look at the hybrids on your website," Marcus replied calmly, his voice steady despite the knot forming in his stomach. "I printed out a few listings. There's a Sonata and a Civic that caught my eye." The receptionist barely registered his words. After a long pause, she asked, "Are you here with your parents?" in a tone that suggested disbelief. Marcus replied firmly, "No, ma'am, I'm buying it myself." With a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, she waved him toward the lot, promising that someone would be out shortly. Marcus stepped outside into the sticky air of a late summer morning. The parking lot was lined with pristine cars, each one reflecting the glare of the rising sun on its metallic body. He walked toward a gleaming Civic, checking that its VIN matched the number on his printout. Just as he neared the car, a tall man in slacks and a red polo, clearly a salesman, cut him off. His voice was curt, "You lost?" The man's eyes swept Marcus up and down, lingering on his sneakers and faded hoodie. "No, sir," Marcus said, holding out his folder. "I'm here to buy a car. I have these listings, I'm serious." The salesman's smile turned forced as he replied, "We've had incidents lately, people wandering around, taking photos, messing with cars they can't afford. You'd be better off coming back with a parent." His words, clipped and dismissive, stung deeply. Despite the rising anger inside him, Marcus kept his voice even. "I'm paying cash," he insisted, "I'm not here to mess around." "Then clear your pockets," the salesman demanded sharply, gesturing toward the glass doors of the store as if to remind him that every detail mattered in this world of high expectations. Marcus's grip on his folder tightened until the dampness of his perspiration was palpable. Without raising his voice or causing a scene, he simply nodded, turned, and walked away, his head bowed with quiet resignation. The drive home was a blur of dripping rain and humming wipers, the rhythmic swish of the windshield a steady reminder of the day's humiliation. Marcus's mind replayed every moment of that encounter, the sting of rejection settling into him like a weight he couldn't shrug off. The familiar streets of Murfreesboro, the park where he used to race his bike with his cousin, the tiny library plastered with faded posters, all these sights felt altered now, as if the pavement beneath his tires had shifted in solidarity with his bruised pride. When Marcus finally pulled into the driveway of his modest home, he sat in his car for a long moment, hands still clutching the steering wheel. Inside, the comforting aroma of lavender mixed with the rich scent of freshly brewed black coffee greeted him, a sensory reminder of better days, of his mother's unwavering belief in his potential. Dr. Angela Freeman, a renowned CEO with a calm yet commanding presence who had built her reputation through sheer determination and intellect, had always taught him that self-worth wasn't measured by appearances. Yet, the cold dismissal at Summit Motors had rattled him in a way he couldn't immediately shake. Later that afternoon, as Marcus sat alone at the kitchen table with his blue folder spread before him, his mother appeared from upstairs. Angela's tone was measured as she inquired about his day. "Tell me what happened," she said gently. Marcus explained in a few short sentences how he'd been told to leave the dealership, just because he didn't look the part, and how that left him feeling invisible. Angela's eyes darkened with quiet resolve. "We're going to set this right," she murmured, though she didn't elaborate further. That night, as the rain pattered softly against the windows, Angela prepared for a mission of her own. She climbed into the driver's seat of her sleek, midnight blue Rolls-Royce, a car she rarely drove but kept in pristine condition as a symbol of her success, and set off for Summit Motors. Angela had spent her life overcoming the obstacles of bias and prejudice in corporate boardrooms and academic conferences. Now, she would confront the same issues at a local dealership where her son had been dismissed. Her presence, measured in a crisp navy blazer, tailored slacks, and polished heels, was a quiet storm of authority. At the dealership, the receptionist's expression shifted instantly as Angela stepped through the glass doors. The luxury of her Rolls-Royce had already stirred curiosity among the staff. "Good morning," she said firmly. "I'd like to speak with the manager." Within minutes, Dan Grissom, the general manager, arrived in a neatly pressed dress shirt and tie. "How can I help you?" he asked, extending his hand. Angela didn't shake it. Instead, she laid down Marcus's blue folder on the counter. "My son came in to buy a car," she began, her voice cool and unwavering. "He was dismissed by your staff because he didn't fit your expectations. That's not acceptable." Dan tried to explain that they preferred appointments and careful browsing, but Angela was relentless. "He came prepared. He has the financing. He is ready to make a purchase. I expect better treatment than being turned away based solely on appearance." Her words, delivered without raising her voice, left the staff in a heavy silence. She didn't demand an immediate solution, she simply stated the truth, a truth that cut through the veneer of exclusivity and bias that had long reigned in the showroom. Angela left as gracefully as she had entered, leaving behind a team forced to confront the consequences of their actions. Back at home, Marcus listened quietly as his mother recounted the day's events. Though he felt both relief and a lingering hurt, Angela's calm determination reassured him that his worth wasn't defined by a single rejection. In the days that followed, rumors of Angela's visit spread through the dealership. Slowly, the tone began to shift. Employees who had once sneered at Marcus started undergoing new training sessions on implicit bias and respectful customer interaction. The management implemented policies meant to ensure that every customer, no matter how casually dressed, was treated with dignity. For Angela, the incident became a catalyst for broader change. Drawing from her own hard-fought experiences in the corporate world, she initiated discussions at Whitestone Research Labs about diversity and inclusion. She emphasized that success was not measured by wealth or appearance, but by the strength of one's character. Her quiet, resolute actions began to spark change beyond just one dealership. Marcus, for his part, felt his world slowly shift as well. On a crisp Saturday morning, he visited another dealership that had responded promptly to his email inquiries about used hybrids. There, he was greeted warmly, allowed to test drive a Hyundai Sonata without judgment, and, at last, sealed the deal on a car that promised reliability. The experience was a quiet victory, a moment of validation that he belonged, not because of his family's wealth or his polished image, but because of his unwavering determination. Yet the ripple effects of that fateful day extended far beyond a single car purchase. The changes at Summit Motors began to reshape the entire community. Employees started greeting customers with genuine smiles. The management introduced regular diversity and inclusion training sessions. Some longtime patrons even remarked on the friendlier, more welcoming atmosphere, noting that the store now reflected a respect for every individual that it had long lacked. At school, Marcus's experience became a symbol among his peers, a reminder that appearances shouldn't dictate respect. Young people started speaking up about their own encounters with bias. Marcus was invited to speak at local community centers and schools, sharing his story with quiet pride. He explained that while the pain of being wrongly judged still lingered, it had also fueled a determination to forge a future on his own terms. Meanwhile, Angela continued to lead by example. At board meetings and community events, she spoke passionately about the need to break down barriers, about creating spaces where everyone could feel welcome, regardless of their background or appearance. Her voice, measured and commanding, resonated with many. She never sought to embarrass or shame anyone, rather, she aimed to remind them that respect was not a privilege reserved for the wealthy or well-dressed, but a basic human right. As weeks turned into months, the changes at Summit Motors began to yield tangible results. The once dismissive staff now showed genuine interest in every customer who walked in. A security guard who had once glared suspiciously at a casually dressed teenager now greeted every visitor with a polite, "Good afternoon." Even Dan Grissom, once so fixated on maintaining an exclusive image, started to focus on creating a more inclusive environment. One sunny afternoon, as Marcus drove his new Sonata along the open highways of Tennessee, he couldn't help but reflect on that pivotal day at the dealership. The Sonata's engine purred steadily, its interior comfortable and unassuming, a stark contrast to the cold, unwelcoming treatment he had endured. In that moment, he realized that his experience was not just a personal setback, it was a catalyst for change in an industry that had long allowed bias to dictate customer service. That evening, as rain lightly drizzled against the windows of their modest home, Angela and Marcus sat together in the living room. Soft jazz played in the background, blending with the comforting aroma of lavender and coffee that filled the room. "I'm proud of you, son," Angela said quietly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You stood up in your own way, even when they tried to dismiss you." Marcus smiled, a small, determined smile that spoke of hard-won resilience and newfound confidence. "I guess I learned that sometimes, silence isn't the answer," he replied softly. "It takes courage to keep your head up and insist on being treated like you belong." Their conversation shifted to the future, a future where every time someone walked into a store, they would be judged not by the clothes they wore, but by the strength of their character. Angela shared her plans to continue advocating for inclusive practices, both at her company and in the community. "Change starts with one person, one small stand," she said. "We have the power to open doors instead of shutting them." Over time, the lessons from that day at Summit Motors echoed throughout the community. The dealership's new policies and training programs began to take root, transforming it into a space where every customer felt valued. Parents, students, and even other local business owners took note, sparking conversations about respect and inclusion across the region. Marcus's story, once a painful memory, evolved into a powerful symbol of resilience. He no longer felt small or ashamed, instead, he embraced his identity and his passion for engineering. Every time he passed by Summit Motors, he remembered the sting of that day, but also the hope that had emerged from it. He began speaking at local schools and community centers, encouraging others to stand up against bias, to fight for respect in every interaction. Angela, too, found solace in the change. At community forums and in board meetings at Whitestone Research Labs, she spoke openly about the incident and its lessons. She reminded everyone that respect shouldn't be conditional upon appearance or social status, but should be a given, a standard that every customer, every employee, deserved. Her calm yet determined voice became a rallying cry for many who had long felt marginalized by a system that valued image over integrity. In the months that followed, as the seasons shifted and the mall's once stifling corridors grew quieter with thoughtful reflection, the impact of that fateful day became clear. The mall's management, spurred by public pressure and internal reviews, began hosting regular diversity sessions. Staff members started to share personal stories about bias, learning to see beyond stereotypes. The once unfriendly faces in the showroom gradually transformed into expressions of genuine curiosity and respect. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to build his own future. He diligently prepared for college, studying late into the night, knowing that every challenge he overcame was a stepping stone toward greater success. His journey was not without setbacks, but each one only reinforced his belief that true worth was measured not by the opinions of a few, but by the courage to stand tall in the face of adversity. One crisp autumn day, as Marcus drove his Sonata along the winding roads of rural Tennessee, he felt the gentle weight of both past and present. The hum of the engine and the soft drizzle on his windshield were reminders that life could be both hard and beautiful, a delicate balance between struggle and triumph. He remembered his mother's quiet strength, her unwavering determination to fight prejudice wherever it reared its head, and her insistence that everyone deserved a chance to be seen for who they truly were. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, the conversation turned naturally to the future. Angela spoke of her plans to expand her company's outreach programs, of the importance of building communities where every voice was heard. Marcus, for his part, expressed a quiet hope that one day he could help design technology to make transportation safer and more accessible for everyone, regardless of background. Their words were gentle, measured, and filled with a resilient optimism that belied the hardship of recent times. In the end, the events at Summit Motors were not just a single incident of discrimination, they were a turning point. They revealed how deeply assumptions could cut and how even the smallest act of dismissal could ripple through an entire community. But they also demonstrated that change, however gradual, was possible when individuals chose to confront bias with dignity and resolve. For Marcus and his mother, that day was both a painful reminder and a catalyst, a spark that ignited a broader movement toward respect and inclusion in places that had long been defined by exclusivity. And though the road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and unanswered questions, they both knew one thing for sure: they were ready to face it together. If this story resonates with you, share it, and subscribe for more tales of everyday courage and change. Because sometimes, the most ordinary moments hold the power to transform the world, one quiet act of defiance at a time.